More than 1.7 million people this year will be diagnosed with cancer in the U.S. alone. But there are foods that you can eat right now to reduce your risk and even help you in recovery. Hi, I'm the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and this is the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. We appreciate you helping to make the world a healthier place. Today, we are going to be talking about the foods that can help to prevent cancer and the diet that can help you reduce your chances of becoming one of those 1.7 million people this year who will receive that life-altering diagnosis. And teaching us how to eat, what you should be stocking up on, and what you should be avoiding is registered dietitian Karen Smith. But a few more numbers to really underscore the importance of what it is we will be talking about today. According to the World Health Organization, up to 50% of all cancer cases can be prevented with what are known as modifiable risk factors, things like smoking and drinking and obesity. And of course, that brings food into the equation. And that is exactly what we will be talking about here today. So if you crunch those numbers, you think 50% of 1.7 million, that is 850,000 cases that could be avoided every single year. So we're going to be playing red light, green light with nutrition. What are the foods that cause cancer? What are the foods that can help prevent it? Karen has those answers, and we're also going to be opening up the Dietitian's Mailbag to answer your questions. So if there's something that you would like to ask Karen, go ahead and drop that in the comments or in the chat, and we will get to as many as we possibly can here on the program today. And with that, let's go ahead and fight some cancer with Karen Smith. Karen, thanks for being here.
Yeah. Hey, Chuck. Happy to be here.
It's good to see you again coming off of ICNM last week. That was quite the conference, and I know cancer was among the hot topics there, so I'm glad that we're going to be able to have this conversation today. I want to start with a question from Lindsay, who was wondering, what are the foods that are most likely to cause cancer?
Yeah, Lindsay, great question. I would love to focus on three in particular. A lot of research in nutrition shows that certain foods are associated with an increased risk of cancer, but there are some foods that there is a causal relationship. So the first is processed meats. They are a group 1 carcinogen. So that means there's sufficient evidence that they cause cancer, specifically colorectal cancer and possibly stomach cancer. So a lot of times people are like, what are processed meats? And as defined by the World Health Organization, they are meats that have been transformed through salting, curing, fermentation, smoking, or other processes to enhance flavor or improve preservation. And they include hot dogs, deli or lunch meats, sausages, bacon, corned beef, beef jerky. And really, for every 50 grams of processed meat eaten daily, so that's about the amount in one hot dog, it increases colorectal cancer risk by 18%. All right, so that's a real concern, especially since, I'm always thinking, this time of year, a lot of kids are going back to school. I, see my own children's school lunch menu and breakfast menu and other school districts. And it's just astounding to me that these processed meats show up on the menu oftentimes every single day in some form. The second group of foods is red meat. And this includes beef, pork, lamb, and goat. And red meats are a group 2A carcinogen, which means they are probably carcinogenic to humans. Okay, so we have evidence from epidemiological studies showing positive associations between eating red meat and developing colorectal cancer, as well as strong mechanistic evidence. And then lastly is alcohol. So alcohol is classified by the World Health Organization as a definitive human breast cancer carcinogen, and that regarding breast cancer, no amount is safe. A study published in the Lancet Oncology in 2021, which was led by scientists from the International Agency for Research on Cancer, or the IARC, showed that an estimated 741,000 new cases of cancer in 2020 were associated with alcohol consumption globally. So these are the three foods that we know are known to cause cancer. Many others, as we keep going with our conversation, we'll talk more about things that are associated with cancer risk.
So, you're talking about group 2A with red meat and then class 1, which is the processed meats. I'm wondering, though, like if the worst of the worst then could be something like a processed meat that is a red meat, like potentially beef jerky, right? So you've got probable and you've got known, and you put those together, and what you got there is an unfortunate super cancer combo. We may not know the exact answer to that, but would that be a hypothesis worth exploring at least?
I don't even know if it's worth exploring, Chuck, to be quite honest. They both seem really dangerous to me, to be putting on our plates. And honestly, when it comes to cancer risk, I really like to take a big picture approach, right? We have so much evidence, as we'll talk about more, that shows that, your overall dietary pattern is what is most important to reducing your risk of cancer and cancer mortality, right? And that overall dietary pattern is one that is rich in whole plant foods. Specifically all the foods we always talk about on this show that are the categories on our power plate, fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains. I'd also throw, nuts and seeds in that category, specifically flax seeds. And really, other than that, I think sometimes what happens is that people get maybe a little bit too hyper focused on one specific nutrient, a vitamin, an antioxidant, and how do you get in that one thing, when really it's taking this bigger picture and having a variety and the overall dietary pattern is what's most important. And removing certain foods or severely limiting them in your diet and making the vast majority or entirety of what you eat whole plant foods.
So here's a question, though. You talk about nuts and seeds, which do have fat in them. And we know that obesity is certainly a risk factor for cancer and a slew of other chronic illnesses. What's the balance there as far as making sure that you get the health benefits of those nuts and seeds while still not going overboard?
Yeah, flax seeds in particular would make my list of, if you wanted to have a list of anti-cancer foods. There's lots of, studies showing that they offer that there is a reduced risk of cancer with flaxseed consumption. And that said, small amounts, right? So another thing about seeds that I love to recommend to people, as opposed to maybe nuts like cashews and pistachios, is that seeds are not foods that people tend to binge eat, right? I've especially like flax seeds and chia seeds. I've never heard someone say oh yeah, I have cravings for when I'm, stressed out, I go reach for the bag of chia seeds, right? So these are foods that, if you're asking someone to include them into their dietary pattern in amounts of, 1 or 2 tablespoons a day, totally doable without having that desire to, put your hand in the bag and keep on snacking the way that some people, myself included. I think nuts are delicious. It's easy to keep on filling up on those foods that are very calorie dense. So things like flax seeds and chia seeds, which are, have lignans that are shown to help reduce cancer risk, and also a great source of omega-3 fats, would be my way to include them in your diet without, having an excessive amount of calories.
Such an important conversation that we're having here today, as evidenced by Cara Devereaux, who's joining us all the way in Sydney, Australia, watching live right now, where it's 2 a.m. All right. So, this is an important conversation that we're having, Karen, today. So thank you very much for helping to raise our health IQs on the best possible level. Important question here from Tanya. So we're talking about whole food, plant-based diet, those foods really offering a great deal of protection. But Tanya's wondering whether all fruits and all vegetables offer that same level of protection.
Yeah, I'd say Maybe not exactly, right? So all fruits and vegetables are going to contribute to our overall consumption of them and our fiber intake for the day. And both of those things are important for reducing cancer risk, right? Like we know the more fruits and vegetables people consume, that's protective, or offers, a reduced risk of cancer, as does, higher fiber in the diet. I'd say there are some specific foods that, I'd say, again, like if I were to make a list, they appear to be extra protective, right? So those foods specifically would be foods from the allium family, like garlic and onions and shallots and leeks. And I feel like these are so wonderful in the sense that they offer so much flavor to the foods that we're making too, and really easy to just, throw into almost anything, right? So chopping up some onions or garlic and throwing them into whatever it is that you might be sauteing, or, even raw onions on a salad. Simple to work into your daily routine. Cruciferous vegetables, so things like kale, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. These are also some foods that I'd say in studies show like some real benefit to including in your diet in terms of reducing cancer risk. I would also include berries and mushrooms, dark green leafy vegetables, and or your orange veggies. So those that are particularly high in carotenoids. So, we're coming into pumpkin season, right? So maybe making some pumpkin muffins to get that bright orange color in there, or butternut squash, sweet potatoes. And outside of the fruit and veggie world, I'd also want to give like a special shout out to, again, the flax seeds, green tea, which has been shown to help reduce risk of breast cancer specifically. Soy. We heard a lot about soy at the recent International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine, and absolutely, reduces the risk of cancer. And we might talk about that a little bit more as something that often people are afraid to include in their diet because they've been given information that's not quite true. And I would also throw turmeric on there. So
shout out to the
overall,
spices, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Spices, I always love to give props to the spices. They're there to add some great flavor to our food. And really, if you think about it, turmeric's a root, it's a plant, and we're just taking it and we're grinding it down. If you're using that form of the spice, you can also buy the actual root and use that in your cooking, or throw a bit of that in a smoothie if you want. But certainly these spices are quite potent in antioxidants. And what a great way to just, increase the nutritional value of your meal by including things like turmeric or curry powder, cinnamon, ginger. All of them are wonderful.
You know what gets me jazzed up is you just rattled off so many different options, but you led with onions, and my wife and I cannot stand it. Like, we think that onions are kind of God's joke on the culinary world. Can't stand them. The only time I ever semi enjoyed an onion was a bloomin' onion way back in the day from Outback before I cleaned up my diet. Of course, you can't even taste the onion at that point. It's just fried. But you rattled off so many different options. And so I guess my point here is that, as you're working with patients, Karen, and they come up to you and say, well, yeah, I hear you, but I really don't like that specific food. I mean, how important is it that they try to force a food into their diet if they just can't stand it? Or, do you work with them to find all of those other options that you were just talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Like that you don't have to eat all of these foods. Obviously, lots of people don't like everything on this list. That's okay. Overall, I want the take-home message to be like, include a wide variety of fruits and vegetables in your diet. Choose different colors of produce. You often hear, the saying, eat the rainbow, but that's such a great way of, having a variety of foods that have different types of antioxidants. And, plants are just, these really interesting things, in my opinion, that I feel like we don't fully understand all of the compounds, how they work synergistically, and so again, just having a variety. It's okay if you don't like all of them. There's certainly, so many options within the plant kingdom. And, that's exactly what I say to families, Chuck. What I want to make this fun for people. I want to make it accessible. I want it to be simple. Find the foods that you and your family enjoy and have a good time with it.
More exam roomy roll call here really quick. Ian checking in from Norway, more international feel. I also want to say hi to Mona and Anton and Dave and Karen. Mommy Vegan Nummy, that's a fun name. Love it when she checks in. Hi to you, Annette. So many great people hanging out in the chat room with us right now. I want to take a question from TM Peoples at 1204. Karen, you mentioned alcohol as a risk factor a little bit earlier on. TM Peoples is wondering whether a whole food plant-based diet can negate or at least reduce the cancer risk that is associated with alcohol consumption.
Yeah, I don't know that study has been done, right? So however, I would say, I always put it out there to people, especially when they ask about specific foods, right? Like, so in this case with the alcohol, I'd say it's not something necessary, right? We don't need it to be healthy. So wouldn't recommend it to anyone to ever include in their diet. And yeah, with every choice we make, there's kind of this risk reward benefit, knowing that the World Health Organization has said, like, it does cause breast cancer and no amount is safe. I feel like that's my message to people, and allowing them to, make an informed choice based on their other lifestyle choices, right? We know a plant-based diet certainly reduces risk of cancer, as does physical activity and, the way that we respond to stress in our lives and restorative sleep. So really allowing people to take in all this information, have evidence and good information to make the decisions that are going to be best for them. But I have to stress that, as the World Health Organization says, no amount is safe.
So I want to go to this notion now that people think that the leaner a food is, the healthier it is. And that does include meat specifically here. A question from Ebony, wondering whether lean red meat is as unhealthy as something like a really marbled fatty steak.
This kind of reminds me, like, I guess my mind is going in the direction of thinking like that's sort of like asking if filtered cigarettes are unhealthy as filtered cigarettes, right? Like all red meat is categorized as a group 2A carcinogen. No matter how lean it is, they are all in that category.
And let's flip from red to white here. We have Sarah here. Can white meat cause cancer? What do we know about an association there, if there is one?
Yeah, so there is there's no causal relationship, I would say, right? That chicken, for example, causes cancer. However, research certainly shows reduced cancer risk for those people eating a plant-based dietary pattern, right? So again, it is that would include removing all sources of animal protein from the diet or limiting them to very small quantities. Of course, I'm going to say doing that, 100% plant-based diet and getting out all of the animal protein, because one of the things we know is that grilling and frying and broiling meats, including chicken, including fish, those white meats that are often labeled as lean, that in the process of doing that, carcinogenic compounds known as heterocyclic amines form in those meats. And so that's one reason right there. Another is that insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1, is something that as a child is good to have. We need that. It promotes growth. And as we get older, we no longer need these high levels of IGF-1 circulating in our blood. We know that there's an increased risk of higher levels of when there are higher levels of IGF-1, that there's greater risk for certain types of cancer, and that eating all types of animal protein increases the production of IGF-1. And so that's another reason right there, that even though, some of these meats are classified as lean, I would, proceed with caution for sure.
And so here's an interesting question then that was sent in by Ken. And this was sent in on Instagram. And Ken then is saying, well, look, why then do certain nutrition guidelines given to cancer patients then include meat in the diet? And he even went so far as to send some specific language that was sent, that is posted on the National Cancer Institute's website. Telling patients, quote, to choose lean meats such as lean beef, pork, trimmed to fat, and poultry such as chicken or turkey without the skin. Also saying choose low-fat milk products and then eat less fat, only small amounts of butter, mayonnaise, desserts, and fried foods. So dairy's in the diet. We haven't yet talked about that, but meat certainly then is suggested there. And you just made that wonderful analogy of, filtered versus unfiltered cigarettes. What's the big difference there? So I guess, is there any sort of clarity that you can offer to Ken here?
Yeah, I can't speak for the specific, organization that's putting out the information for sure. But, my brain kind of goes down the path of following the money and, who funds these different entities that are, conducting nutrition research, providing nutrition information to the public. And, I would suggest, looking around, there are certainly organizations. I go to the American Institute for Cancer Research, which is a national nonprofit cancer charity that provides funding for cancer research and education specifically on the relationship of cancer to diet, physical activity, and body weight, and largely receives funding from individual donors, right? So not industry. And it recommends the following. So this is directly from that organization, from the American Institute for Cancer Research. They say make whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and pulses, such as beans and lentils, a major part of your normal diet. Scientific evidence shows that eating mostly plant-based foods, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and beans plays a big role in preventing cancer and contributing to a healthier life.
Yeah. So that's the important thing. I mean, more fruits, more vegetables, get that fiber in there, and get that animal protein, that fat, and get that out, man. And you'll just do so better. I mean, today we're talking about cancer, but this is probably for the podcast, I think it's show 365. And so, we've covered so many different topics throughout the course of the years, as far as what these healthier foods can do to reduce your risk of all kinds of chronic diseases. Today, I'm as excited about that today as I was on day one when we first started the show. I want to give a quick shout out to Dave here. Dave just posted in the chat that he's been doing a whole food plant-based diet for just over 2 months, says he's feeling so much better. He's no longer eating meat. He's really cut down the fat, feeling really good. He says that he has already lost 21 pounds. Dave, that is fantastic, man. I love to hear that. Congratulations on all of your success so far and everything that's still to come, man. Keep us posted, Dave. That's fantastic news. Karen, all of these plant foods that you're talking about, what do they have in common? Fiber. They all have fiber in it. Blair, when it comes to cancer, Blair is wondering, how important is fiber in cancer prevention?
Extremely important, certainly for cancer prevention and for so many other things, each of which, Chuck, I feel like we could make an entire, topic of a podcast episode. But to be brief, some of the ways in which fiber is helpful for reducing cancer risk. One is that fiber feeds our healthy gut microbes. And I know recently you've had Dr. Chudkan, Dr. Frosty, Dr. B is a monthly guest, right? All talking about the importance of fiber for feeding our healthy gut microbes, you might be thinking, well, why is that important for preventing cancer? And research shows, people with cancer have an out of balance gut microbiome or dysbiosis. And so that, in order to foster that healthy gut that we want, that's going to help with our immune function and just keeping us healthy in general, that fiber is really, really important to feeding those gut microbes. Secondly, a diet high in fiber is also helpful for weight management. And obesity is a real big concern and risk factor for numerous, like 13 types of cancers at least. Obesity is significantly increases the risk of. And, choosing these whole plant foods will not only help people achieve a healthier weight, that also is going to in turn reduce their risk of cancer. In addition, fiber is what helps move waste through and out of our digestive tract, which is especially important for reducing colon cancer risk. And in that process of moving waste out of our digestive system, certain hormones, excesses of like estrogen, are going to be moved out of our bodies. And that can be really important for helping reduce breast cancer risk, as an example. Lastly, I'd say, like you said, Chuck, fiber is found in all these wonderful plant foods that we are talking about, and they are exactly the foods that, all of the evidence-based cancer research institutions who are putting out wonderful information on nutrition are saying, make the majority of your diet these whole plant foods.
All right. Now, beans also have a lot of fiber, and beans good for the heart. But as you said earlier, also really good for reducing your risk of cancer. Let's take a question from Nicole, though, who is wondering whether some beans might be more protective than others in this arena.
Yeah, I'd certainly give a shout out to soybeans, right, that are absolutely associated with reduced risk of breast cancer, and breast cancer recurrence. And otherwise, I'd say it's great to include a variety of beans and lentils in the diet, since different varieties have slightly different nutrient profiles and antioxidants. And as several of your recent guests talking about fiber and gut health have shared, just in very recent episodes, that including at least 30 plants in your diet every week is a strategy for increasing the diversity of microbes in the gut. So again, try different ones out, include a variety. You don't have to like everyone. There's so many options within that group of legumes that, find a few or many that work for you and go from there.
Yeah, that's Dr. Megan Rossi, who was here on Monday's video, just released the audio on Tuesday's podcast. She just put out a book, How to Eat 30 Plants, and basically laid out 30 plants per week and laid out how much easier it is than it sounds. Like 30 just sounds like a really high number when you're getting started. But the fact of the matter is you can do it just probably in the first couple of days and without having to think too much about it. It's really a lot easier to do than you might imagine. Follow-up bean question here from Cindy, and this may be a level 201 or even a 301 level question. So feel free to hit pause and do a little research, and we'll come back to it on a future episode. But Cindy at 1212 said, regarding variety, I hear black beans come up as being really good for you along with garbanzo. Cindy says she tries to eat black beans the most, but she's wondering whether that could limit the benefits of other types of beans. So is there any kind of interaction or block that can happen there?
No, I'd say that this might be one of those questions where I'm like, again, zoom out, look at the big picture, right? I don't know what Cindy has heard about, black beans and garbanzo beans in particular. I'm thinking, knowing black beans are quite high in antioxidants. Maybe that's one of the things. But no, like if the question is like, is eating more of, a couple of types of foods within a category taking away from others? Not necessarily. It really is about all the other foods that you're eating in the day too. Like, are you including a variety of whole grains? Do you have a large portion of fruits and vegetables in your diet? And when I say large, like my personal recommendation is for people to aim for at least 10 different fruits and vegetables a day. And so all of those things, right? Again, you don't necessarily have to have, huge variety within all of them. You could still easily get to 30 plants in a week, even if you're favoring, 2 or 3 different legumes.
That variety, spice of life, key to health too. How about that? Let's take a question from Jill Russell at 12:15. This actually may win the award for question of the day. Jill Russell, I've heard that barbecuing and grilling meat leads to cancer. Does the same effect happen, though, when you're barbecuing tofu or veggie burgers or veggie hot dogs?
Oh, yeah, I love that question. So the heterocyclic amines that I was talking about earlier that are formed are not formed in plant foods. They are formed only in muscle tissue, in animal foods. So you don't have to worry about those being created when you are grilling your vegetables.
Shout out to Marlon, says they're checking in from the Philippines. Okay, international feel again. How about this for breakfast? I eat raw minced garlic before breakfast every day and then wash it down with warm lemon water. Does garlic often wind up on your breakfast menu, Karen?
No. I'll be quite honest. Not on my breakfast menu. I guess maybe now I could, since I'm doing all my work, via telehealth. But in the past, I feel like I probably would have been scared to face my patients, at 9 o'clock in the morning after eating a bunch of garlic. But that's awesome. Like, fantastic. What a great way to start your day, for sure. Maybe I have it in my breakfast when I make a tofu scramble. It's definitely in that.
Right.
Not in my smoothie.
Like raw minced garlic. It's either like you press the garlic clove or you go and you get the minced garlic that you've bought from the store and you take a spoonful of it. I mean, that is a commitment to garlic. I mean,
I love garlic, and yeah, I'm like that takes it up a notch for sure.
Not just a notch. I mean, you're like 2-3 notches. I mean, that's a good. You don't need coffee if you're going with the raw garlic first thing. My goodness gracious. I don't know where to go from there other than to take a question from Robin. This is an interesting one that we have honestly, I don't think ever covered on the show. Robin wants to know whether a lack of calcium in the diet can increase the risk of cancer.
A lack of calcium. So there's not a causal relationship. There's some evidence suggesting reduced cancer risk in individuals with higher calcium intake. Certainly vitamin D plays an important role. And I would say that, again, like on a plant-based diet specifically, like, okay, let's make sure, of course, it's very important to get enough calcium. And so again, going for some of those foods that I said I would list on my, if I had to make a checkoff sheet of the foods I'd include to reduce cancer risk, things like kale, your collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, all of those dark green leafy vegetables, with the exception of a few that are higher in oxalates, like spinach and Swiss chard and beet greens. The calcium in those is not as well absorbed. And then again, beans provide some calcium. Molasses, if people out there like molasses, that's one, if you want to call it a sweetener. I don't think it particularly tastes very sweet. But that has some minerals, including calcium in it, as do fresh oranges. And really, all plant foods are going to have small amounts, and throughout the day having a variety. But I'd say especially making sure you're getting in those dark green leafy vegetables. It's a good strategy to get adequate calcium.
Global Health, some more. Kim here is checking in from Jerusalem today. Kim, thanks for watching. And that's amazing. Karen, I want to get real. This is a really big question from Yanagi here at 12:16. And this is something maybe a lot of people are wondering about. She says, my mother battled breast cancer and lost one of her breasts. She doesn't want to change her diet, though, to whole food plant-based. And she even thinks I'm abusing my child by not giving him meat and eggs. What can I do? That's a tough one. That is so tough.
That is. I mean, I like feel for you, because I'm sure as a daughter myself, obviously like wanting, my mother, if I was in your shoes, to prevent cancer recurrence, and wanting to share this information that is so powerful and is going to potentially make a huge difference, and having that not be received, I can imagine would be really challenging. And at the same time, it's one of the things that I've learned from a mentor of mine, wonderful Howard Jacobson, is that people don't resist change; they resist being changed. And so providing information in a way that allows that person to be open to it when they're ready in their time, and continuing on your path of setting the example of knowing that what you are doing is absolutely healthy and the best choice for your family and for your children. And yeah, just having the confidence in that what you are doing for yourself and your family is right. And hopefully in seeing your example and with offering the information, and perhaps just putting it out there that, when she is ready to discuss it, you are there for her to have the conversation.
It's a tricky question from Rose. I know that you don't like to zero in on specific foods. You like to take kind of that bigger picture approach. And we have talked about beans a lot, but what about some other kind of legumes here? Things like lentils. And Rose is also wondering about grains. What kind of protection do those two foods offer?
Oh, lots. Yeah. I mean, they are, if you haven't guessed already, I love talking about beans, but certainly lentils, throw them into that category. I mean, personally, I love lentils even more because they are, well, maybe not more, but I love cooking red lentils. I think they're amazingly delicious. They cook so quickly, right, from dried. And they're so inexpensive, as are dried beans too. But certainly whole grains, I love, talking about them because they're so overlooked in the U.S. diet. And both of these food categories, the legumes, the whole grains, are, some of the highest sources of fiber for sure, right? If you're just thinking, well, I eat a lot of fruits and veggies, and I hear that a lot from people I work with, and, we're talking about increasing fiber, it can still be, a bit challenging to get what I recommend as far as your fiber intake goes without including these whole grains and legumes in your diet, because they are really packed so full of that in particular. And one of the recommendations of the American Institute for Cancer Research is to eat whole grains and or legumes at every meal, Chuck, every meal. How many people in this country are doing that, and abroad, for our international watchers too? How many people are eating whole grains and or legumes every single meal?
I would venture to say it's not a very high number, sadly. I would honestly venture to say that. But international, real quick, we have time for just a little bit more here. International flair, Rolf in Colombia checking in. Hello, sir. And Shyama from South Africa also joining us live here. I mean, the time difference, it's just got to be amazing. That's so incredible that you guys are carving out a little bit of your day to be here with us. And oh boy, Salad Strong Soprano, who I'm guessing is a plant-based singer. Get this, Karen. My mother also ate raw garlic, and there were many conversations about her breath. No surprise there. None whatsoever. My goodness. Can you imagine? Just raw garlic, and it's healthy, but man, you really got to be around the ones that you love who are going to tolerate that, right?
Yeah. And, maybe that was a way to just really connect with the people that you love most in your life, and keep some other people at a distance.
Maybe, maybe that's the smart play when you just want to be left alone. Eat a spoonful of garlic, minced garlic, before you leave the house. Oh man, classic. Okay, last question here. We have a couple of people wondering about eggs and whether there is a connection between cancer there. A lot of people still believe that eggs are part of a healthy diet. We know that's not necessarily the case for a multitude of reasons, but specific to cancer, what do we know, if anything?
Yeah. So again, we're taking that bigger picture approach and knowing that, all animal protein, has been shown to increase cancer risk and mortality. Eggs would be included in that category. Something else about eggs is that they're rich in choline, and choline, as it's getting digested, causes our gut microbes to create TMAO, which is a compound that is inflammatory and has been shown to, promote this inflammation in our body. So, certainly I am encouraging people to get eggs out of their diet. They are animal protein. And not part of when we're taking that big picture approach. It really is about two things. It's not just about the removal of animal-based foods. We know that that's helpful, and eggs would fall in that category. And at the same time, really making those whole plant foods be predominantly what is on our plate at every single meal.
The most incredible thing is happening, Karen. The more that we talk about the international flair that the show has today, the more people are coming out of the woodwork, the more exam roomies are sharing where they're watching from today. Cynthia is in Rome. That's awesome. And Marion is in Ireland, where they say it's 5:40 right now p.m. So dinner and a show, maybe. I think that's kind of what's going on here. That's fantastic. So many great countries, and I promise you, keep them coming. And we're going to get everybody shout outs in future episodes. I think that this is going to become a recurring thing because, the need for nutrition knowledge and improved health, it is definitely not limited to the United States. This is a global impact that we're having here, Karen.
Absolutely. I love it.
Very cool. Very cool. And if we did not get to your question today, I promise we will do our best also to get you an answer on an upcoming episode. And by the way, this episode of the Exam Room Live is sponsored by the Barnard Medical Center. And the BMC is located in Washington, D.C., and it practices lifestyle medicine and promotes plant-based nutrition, offering both in-person visits and telemedicine visits in 18 different states. You can visit them online right now, barnardmedical.org, or call the medical center at 202-527-7500 to learn more. And if you enjoyed the show today, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, be sure to like it there as well. And don't forget also to subscribe to the Exam Room Podcast by the Physicians Committee on Apple Podcast or on Spotify, wherever it is that you get your shows. And when you do that, please also leave a 5-star rating, because the cool thing, Karen, is that literally every single time somebody subscribes to the podcast, they leave that 5-star rating and that nice review, we climb a little bit higher in the podcast rankings. And that's important, not for ego purposes. Has nothing to do with being number one for the sake of being number one. What it has to do with is making sure that this information reaches people when they need it the most, right? So if they're having a really difficult time and they are at their wits' end with their health, and they're searching for the podcast that can give them that solution that gets them on that healthier track, we want the Exam Room to be that podcast. And the higher we are at the rankings, the easier it becomes for them to find it. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and do that on Apple or Spotify and leave that 5-star rating. But Karen, for today, that is all the time that we have. Thank you so very much for being here and helping to raise our health IQs.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Chuck.
And to the crew behind the scenes that makes the magic happen, thank you. And to the Exam Roomies tuning in from all over the world, you guys are truly extraordinary and the reason why we do this show. And for everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We'll talk to you again soon, but until then, keep it plant-based.